What's going on, guys? Chris here with 4K Motoring, and today we've got another Corvette video. We're going to be doing a pretty major update to the lighting, at least on the rear of the car. We're going to be switching out to some halo LED lights on the rear for the rear centers. We're going to be switching out to a strobing LED center light. Even though the stock one is LED, this will be a little bit more modern. We'll match the side lights a little bit better, and some laser side lights. We're going to hold off on doing the front lights just for a little while. I'm still deciding exactly what route I want to go, but I want to run you guys through the installation of all the lights, see how they turn out, and see all the parts involved. So I know there are some other videos online of this installation. It is not a very hard thing to do. One thing I find a little bit odd is most of them split apart the installation of the lights and the hyperflash wiring harness in the vehicle itself. So I want to put them both in the video here for you guys to watch one video, have all the information included. Hopefully you guys find it useful, and hopefully you like the final outcome. So we're back in the garage. We're going to go ahead and get these things installed. So far what I have in is the 4 oval taillights and the laser side marker lights. So we're going to go ahead and install those first. I have some license plate lights and that rear center stop light that are still on the way. We're going to do the hyperflash wiring harness as well. Hopefully we'll knock this out pretty quick. Very minimal tools needed. Just a screwdriver and a T15 Torx driver, and that should be it for these jobs. In our big box here from eBay, we have first a little box that is our side marker lights, and as you can see from them, they have a connector just like you would get on the bulb, and there's a row of LEDs down the center of this to make almost like a laser light that'll just have a very modern appearance. Likewise, we have this set of these modified halo brake lights. They're labeled right and left on each one just because they all have a little bit different curve to them. If you look at the angle, that way they only fit one direction. There are a couple different versions of these. The original ones, I assume for DOT reasons, when the running light's on, it's going to show the halo around the outside as well as low power mode on the inside LEDs. So the whole thing lights up, and then when you hit the brakes, the inside LEDs just go to a higher brightness. This one with the modified halo, a little bit extra cost. What the running lights is literally just the halo on the outside. The inside just does the high power on brake application, but it is completely off for the inside during running light mode. For these, the connector is the same as the bulb. You'll see this is exactly like the bulb that will come out, and the socket here has the same cutouts, so your OEM bulb will just be a quick replacement for this. It's got the same screw holes on both sides for your Torx, T15 Torx to fit back in. Make sure you check those bolts really well. If they're showing signs of rust, we want to go ahead and replace them. I believe it's an M8 size 1-inch bolt that you can get at any hardware store. Likewise, there's a hyperflash harness that comes with this kit from eBay. I'll leave links to all this stuff in the description below. And this is going to make the hyperflash that you get from switching to LED turn signals a non-issue. Okay, obviously you can see the factory lights that are in here. These are still recessed as they were from the factory. There's not a flush mount kit. Personally, I don't really like the way that looks. There's no seal on the back of these, so you can see the dirt and all that comes through, and I'll explain kind of why that happens on these bulbs. But we're not going to change any of that. Our hardware here is all in good condition, so we're just going to reuse that as long as nothing changes when we pull it out. This is a pretty easy job. These are the screws that come out. Again, it's 1-inch M8 thread, These are a T15. So on the back, we have just this simple plug. It's got a little tab you can press in and rotate just about a quarter turn. It comes right out, and that's our OEM bulb. So in regards to the side marker light, the one we have right there, there's a couple ways of taking that out. A lot of people, when they're just doing that one, are going to go from the wheel well, just removing the inside wheel liner and pulling that out. That involves taking the wheel off, creating a little bit of space, and that's very doable. We're going to try, since we have, let me turn this light on here, since we have the taillight out here, we can see in there, hopefully, that is the interior of the marker light. Notice it's got those two bolts. I believe they're going to be 7mm. Our new one is just plastic unthreaded, so I believe those bolts just thread the plastic, so they're a little bit difficult to get started, but it should be a pretty easy swap once we get that done. So these are going to be the bolts that go on to the factory side marker, and we can see this is plastic as well, that those bolts self-threaded on there, so that does make it a little bit more difficult to get this started. So on the back of the connector is our bulb. It's just going to spin again about a quarter turn to the left, so counterclockwise, and this just comes off. Our bulb itself should just pull straight out of there, and we can see our connectors, which are very similar to the connector on the new bulb. Just to make note, before installing the new one here, I did go ahead and pre-thread these bolts on. Again, 11mm or a 7/16 fits perfectly for these, and they're self-cutting, they thread on. It's going to be a little difficult to do if you wait till you get it in the car. It is very doable, it'll just be more difficult. So having it pre-threaded, I think, will help us lock those on a little bit easier and get them tightened down without much issue. We went ahead and we cleaned the whole area here, again using our Chemical Guys Nonsense Invisible Super Cleaner. Something I like a lot. It was very easy to clean that off. We're going to go ahead and plug our new one in, get it installed. These are LED, and LEDs typically are directional. I don't know if these are. So when I plug it in, before we get it tightened down, I am just going to turn them on real quick just to make sure they work. And here they are. This is the side marker light. The orientation of the posts on here, these only go one direction as far as orientation. So top, bottom, you don't have to worry about. Just flip them over until you find the right orientation. We're going to go ahead and secure them and get those taillights in. On the back of them, this plug. That's going to match the socket that was in here. And that snaps right in. This has a big lug and two little lugs that coincide with the housing here. So you can shove those wires in carefully, twist it. There you go. There's no real locking ring on it, but it will at least stay secured. Just like before we screw this in, we are going to turn it on just to make sure we have functionality. It is worth noting, these are definitely heavier than the factory bulbs were. So if you are a racer that wants a street legal car they can take to the track, this may not be the direction you want to head, obviously, unless you need more weight on the rear of the car, because they do add a little bit. Here they are installed. Let's go ahead and, again, turn them on, test them, make sure they work. We have not yet installed our HyperFlash harness, so they will blink a little bit fast, but at least we can get a feel for how they look compared to, for example, the stock ones on that side. Okay, so that's a successful test. For a quick comparison, There's the factory. I think these add a really nice modern touch to the back of this car, especially combined with this new laser LED side light. Gives the car really much more of a modern look overall, and I'm pretty happy with that. So let's go ahead and do the other side, see how it turns out. That was a pretty easy job overall. We do have all of them installed. Go ahead and take a look with them off. And we can go ahead and turn the lights on here, and I'll put on the four-way flashers so you can see that. And without the lights on, here's how they look. Definitely pretty visible, pretty modern. We're still waiting on our top light to come in. That one is pretty easy to install as well. If you have it at the same time that you're doing the other lights, it's pretty easy to reach in from inside here to get underneath. I believe those are the 7mm bolts and a connector. The way we're probably going to do it, since we already have these lights installed and we're still waiting on this one, we're going to remove this license plate frame, which is the license plate bolts, and then the 4 T15 Torx bolts. This whole panel comes off, and then you have a big hole. You can reach directly up to where the screws are in the bottom of this plate and remove that light. Let's go ahead and do the hyperflash harness and see how that works. I'll show you with the four-way flashers it's slow, but let me turn the turn signal on and you'll see why you need them. So when I turn the four-way flashers off, you have to put the key in, but we can see how fast that is flashing, and that is because it's the LED bulb. So this is the speed it should be flashing at, and this is what it's currently doing. To get the hyperflash harness installed, it's a very easy connector to get in there. Doesn't require removing a whole lot inside, especially compared to the head unit and that sort of thing that we've done in the past. All we have to do is get the kick panel off from under the steering wheel, and that is done pretty easily. Inside the car, we're going to, with a small screwdriver, get right up. There's a little groove under here. We're going to pop this panel out. There's going to be a T15 Torx that's behind it that we need. Our ambient air temperature sensor cover. Again, a little flathead screwdriver can fit right underneath it. And there's going to be another T15 Torx right behind that. And then underneath this panel, we're going to have one that is actually missing and another one right over there. Okay, we're going to get those off, and that will allow us access to the wiring harness, which is right back under here, underneath where our ignition is. Okay, so with a little screwdriver, we're going to come right up under here. We're going to pop this out, and we're actually going to unclip this connector. Very easy, just one tab, and this little connector comes right off. We've got our T15 right behind it. Same thing, we're going to get our little cover off our air temperature sensor, and we've got our T15 right behind that as well. All right, now this whole panel should, there we go. This has these little metal clips, retaining clips, some on both sides, so you have to defeat those by just pulling straight back. One thing to notice on mine, this air temperature sensor holder was broken on mine when I got it, so that sensor did not come out with it. If yours did, you're going to have to disconnect that sensor. It just has two tabs on the side that pulls and comes right out. So the wiring connector we're going to want is this white one right here. All right. So it's got one release right on this side. There we go. We can see the connector, both sides of it. This here is our Hyperflash harness. As we can see, both sides are just like the ones we just unplugged. So it's as simple as just putting this in line, and it's got its little, I assume this is a resistor of some sort to add load to the flashing unit, so it thinks it's got incandescent bulbs still in it. But let's go ahead and plug that in. I'll show you where it goes. So this is the connector that we just unplugged. We can see how the harness is identical. So that's what we're going to use. We're going to plug male into female. It snaps shut. Make sure that locking tab is in there. It is fully connected. And this side is going to snap in. So now everything is connected just like it was. We're going to go ahead and route this kind of behind this dash area so it's secure. All this insulation is flaking off just from age. We're going to go ahead and test the connector. We're going to test that the turn signals work properly, no hyperflash, and we'll get it all put back together. From inside the car, we can go ahead and test this. Before you turn the car on, I would go ahead and plug this switch back in. All I'm going to do is turn the key on to the run position, and we can see our turn signal is not hyperflashing. So it seems to be working just fine. The car is back together. All the interior is put back the way it should be. We can see as we go around the car from the back, we have our halos fully functioning and quite a modern look for the car, I do believe. Just have a good look at everything. Here they are. Everything works exactly like we wanted it to. I think this is a big improvement. This kit was about $400 when we talk about the lights themselves of the Halo mod, the side lights, and the Hyperflash harness altogether. Right about $400. I'll put links to everything I bought down in the description below if you want to check them out. Pretty cool setup. They feel pretty high quality. Definitely enhance the look and bring it into the 2020s, I do believe. Overall, this was a very easy job to do. Like I said, just required some very basic hand tools, something just about anybody can do. All we used was a very small screwdriver for the interior jobs. We used an 11mm open wrench or 7/16. They both did the same thing. Ratchet and open end wrench were both pretty useful for this job. A T15 Torx driver, and obviously a ratchet of some sort to use all that stuff. That was it. Basic hand tools, something that just about everybody should have that owns one of these cars. Definitely didn't take more than an hour to get done. Obviously, if you're not filming things, make sure you clean as you go. Nonsense super cleaner, awesome stuff. Again, link for everything down in the description. We'll go ahead and get some night shots once we get all the center tail light and license plate lights done, and I'll show you how the final product looks. Thanks for watching 4K Motoring. I'm Chris. We're definitely going to have some more Corvette content coming up this year by a big margin. Hit that like button and subscribe if you haven't already, and we'll see you next time.